You're listening to the Basketball Lab podcast with your hosts Mark Shannon, Mark Clark, and Marco Corona. They'll discuss all the top news and stories from around the basketball world while giving their opinion and insight. Now, here are your hosts.
Hello and welcome to the Basketball Lab podcast. I'm your host, Mark Shannon, and once again, I'm joined remotely, still staying that 6 feet apart by my co-host, Marco Corona. What's going on?
What up? Lockdown City, what's going on?
Right, and another lockdown, another stay-at-home order.
I never left, so to me, I'm good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The thing to me is what the hell are you having a stay-at-home order for? You've closed everything down. Like, why the hell would I travel somewhere else when it's closed down? You know what I mean? Like, you don't need a stay-at-home order when everything's closed. Why would I travel to Mississauga to get a haircut when you can't get a haircut? Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense to me. So I don't think you really needed a stay-at-home order.
But never thought about it that way.
There's nothing open. Like,
never thought about it that way. Why would I go to Saga if nothing's open?
Right, I can't go to Cambridge to a restaurant to have something to eat because they're not open. So it's like, what's the difference? Like, you know what I mean? You didn't need a stay-at-home order. You could have just said, we're closing all this stuff down, right? But I guess that's Doug Ford and their government and stuff. But anyways, to basketball talk, right? The actual reason for this podcast, you know what I mean? We had a big NCAA game the other day, right? National championship. Baylor, right? Yeah. National championship. We had Gonzaga against Baylor in the finals, right? Gonzaga was going for their undefeated season. And, and you've mentioned it before. This tournament is one of those one and done games. You aren't hitting your shots. You're in tough. You're going to be in tough, especially against a team like Baylor. So I want to get your take on the game and how you saw it go and how it played out.
Wow. At halftime, the deficit was 10?
Yeah.
Right. At one point during the game, they were up as much as 16 or 19 points, whatever the case is. And you were waiting for a run and get it to 8, get it to 10, or get it to within, single digits.
Yeah.
And it never came. And this was the proverbial, and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. It was exactly what I said it was going to be. Not necessarily the result, but what I was saying, the one concern I had is what happens if they get punched in the mouth and they don't know how to recover. Right? Gonzaga had been cruising outside of that UCLA game. That was the closest thing. And you can argue they should have lost that game, right? Outside of that UCLA game, they were basically thumping people. Like, it was video game-like. There was no adversity. There was nothing. And again, to your point, and in fairness, right, I'm not here to claim, oh my God, I told you so. But yes, it is a one-and-done tournament. So in a bad day, the best team doesn't necessarily always win. No. Right, the team that plays the best will win, but not the team with the best players. And I mean, from a talent-wise and record-wise, and history that they were chasing, et cetera, they couldn't recover, man. Timmy looked like the Timmy down the street from my house, right? Like, he was an average player, and sorry, I had to get that in there, but I was surprised in the way that it happened. The fact that they lost, not necessarily, I guess. I mean, you could argue that could happen to any team, but I guess you can say that Gonzaga got Eli Manning because they were going for the perfect season and they got thumped, and that was it. They never looked back. Yes, I just did an Eli Manning reference on this basketball podcast.
Yeah, who would have thought that, right? It was so funny because we were talking about the big three of Gonzaga with Jalen Suggs, Timmy, and Kispert, but it was the big three of Baylor, right? You had Jared Butler, you had Maceo Teague, and you had Davion Mitchell, right? Three big name players in college basketball, right? Jared Butler was up for Naismith Player of the Year. Shout out to Luka Garza for winning that. But right, you had an arguably one of the best defensive teams in Baylor. We said that when they went up against Houston in terms of the defensive the game, and we saw it in the first half and how they shut down Drew Timme, right? Against UCLA, Timme was absolutely dominant, right? And then against Baylor, he only ends up with 12 points on 5 of 7 shooting, right? So, I mean, if you're only hitting on 5 shots and you're one of the big name players for Gonzaga, you're not talking about a good night for Gonzaga. And we saw it happen. You know, they lost by 16 points at the end of the day. But Davion Mitchell, that's one guy I want to take a shout out. His draft stock has kind of taken a little bit of a skyrocket after this tournament. He's had such a great tournament in terms of the way he's played the game, right? 15 points. He's had double-digit points all season, basically. 15 points, right? He had 12 against Houston, another 12 against Arkansas, right? Villanova, Wisconsin, all double-digit points. He's helped out. They needed additional scoring. You can't rely on Jared Butler to do it all and Maceo Teague. So you needed that extra lift. And Baylor got that, right, with those 3 guys. And, we didn't see any buzzer beater from Jalen Suggs or anything like that this game, but he needed help. And he didn't get the help from Kispert and Timme like he's normally had from those other 2 players. So it was kind of
and again, they made Gonzaga look like an average team. And I don't know if maybe it was one of those things that even us as basketball fans and college fans, and we all knew how Baylor was good, but maybe even the experts underestimated how good they actually were. And by the way, I didn't realize how freaking big this team was. Like, apparently they were working out with the football team. Was that the joke or something like that? But they got bullied. Gonzaga got bullied.
Yeah,
that was it. It was no contest. And again, listen, if you can argue if this was a best of 7, Gonzaga maybe wins, but it wasn't, right? And they got punched and they never got off the mat. You got to give Baylor credit. I mean, they punked Houston, right? And they punked Gonzaga, and that was it. And I thought Houston was a pretty good team, and they made him look extremely average as well. So again, this is the beauty of the tournament, right? Gonzaga was this giant that got a pretty good path from in the bracket, and we all thought, okay, well, Gonzaga is definitely going to be in the finals, right? It was the almost like the Brooklyn factor, right? There's no way they don't get to the finals, and there's no way they don't win. Well, guess what? They got to the finals, but they didn't finish the job. So, we were talking about just off air before we started recording about wrestling. We were just, I don't know how we even got into that topic. And Gonzaga has the one blemish, just like the Undertaker had the blemish on WrestleMania, right? So there you go. That, I guess you can say that Baylor was Brock Lesnar to Gonzaga. I mean, sorry, just that's what it was, man. And it just they didn't see it coming. Again, from the moment the ball was tipped, it was game over. It was done.
And it's funny because maybe Gonzaga should have seen that coming, because at the beginning of the season, Baylor and Gonzaga were the 2 best teams in college basketball, right? And then Baylor had their COVID issues, and they had to be shut down and all this stuff, and they ended up losing a few games here and there. And that's what kind of pushed them back a little bit in terms of, and gave Gonzaga the clear runaway number 1, right? But those 2 were head-to-head in terms of best teams in the nation early on in the season. And then, like I said, it just happened that they got COVID issues and an outbreak, and they had to shut down, and there was a lot of different things that went on, and they just couldn't get back on track a little bit, right? So, but the record
sheet said that Gonzaga was undefeated. And so you start reading your clips, man. You start believing, and these are young kids too, right? Let's not get it twisted, right? And again, they completely muscled their way through the entire tournament to get to where they were, and they should have won, and they did it. And again, they keep beating up on this point. When they got knocked down, they did not know how to react. And you can see it. There was they just look rattled. They just look unorganized. They just they didn't look like a number 1 seed. They look like an actual 16th seed. And that's how good Baylor is. When they make you look like you're not a number 1 seed, and to your point, they should have seen this coming. You're right. That's a very good point.
Yeah, agreed. They should have seen it coming. They didn't come. I don't know if they might not have come prepared in terms of game plan wise, but Baylor showed them how they play their game and how the game's played, and they shut them down and ended up walking away with the national title. right? On the flip side of things, right, you had a big blowout in the men's game, in the men's one, right? And then you had the women's game between Arizona and Stanford, right? Sort of in terms of ranking wise, not so much, but it was a David versus Goliath in a sense, right? Stanford was one of the number one teams in the nation this year. They have some of the best players. They have Steph Curry's god sister, right? Camp in Brink on the team. But Arizona, man,
family,
right? The fight in that team, like there's so much fight on that team, right? Aari McDonald, my God, that girl's got game, right? We saw it against UConn when they were able to knock off Connecticut, right? UConn, and they were arguably the favorites to win the whole thing, right? You know what I mean? They had the Naismith Player of the Year there, and they were able to knock them off by 10. And I had predicted UConn was going to win that game by 10 plus points. And Arizona went on and proved that they're no slouches. They were a really good team out there. So I want to get your take on that game.
To me, honestly, it's exactly what you said. And it's not so much the outcome that I want to talk about. To me, it's just, and you sort of stole my thunder, but that's okay though, right? We're friends. It's somebody like McDonald. Like this girl can just straight ball, and I just the competitive and just the heart and soul, and I mean, I was so impressed. And again, I have to go back to this point. I am so glad that finally the ladies were put on a focus on their own stage, on national TV, on a Sunday where everybody's at home. Yes, I know we're in lockdown, so there's nothing else to watch. That's not the point. The point is that if I'm a casual basketball fan and I was watching ladies basketball for the first time, there is no way that I don't watch this again. This was phenomenal. Again, the better team won. Competitive from day one, started the tournament. I loved it. I loved everything about it. But to me, what impressed me the most was McDonald's game. I don't know. There's something about her. It's almost like watching Allen Iverson, just complete heart and soul, and I loved it, honestly. Like I was thinking of just getting her jersey, man. She's a bomb. Loved it.
Well, and you got to look at it in terms of point wise. Over the last 4 games, McDonald put up 28 points per game, right? She had a 31-point game against Texas A&M. She had a 33-point game against, I believe, Iowa. Indiana, sorry, I should say. Then she had another 26 points against the number 1 ranked team in UConn, and then she followed it up with another 22-point performance against Stanford. Shout out to Canadian Shayna Pellington, right? She was a really good player. She played well in the national championship. Was one of the catalysts and the reason why Arizona was able to make that game as close as it was, right? Unfortunately, McDonald wasn't able to hit that last-minute 3-point shot to win the game, but shout out to Shayna Pellington, right? She was able to help, right? Help catapult their little late run to make it a close game. And then, on the other side, on the flip side, you got Haley Jones, Lexi Hall, right? There's Brink, right? Like I said, the god sister of Steph Curry, right? So, right, exactly. If you're the god sister of Steph Curry, you got to be a good basketball player, right? So
you better be.
It was she is. Right. Out of the 2 games, it was the more exciting game for me. I enjoyed watching that game. And seeing.
You're talking about between the Monday and the Sunday game?
Between the men and the women's. I think, to me, that was the more exciting game.
Right.
It was only a 1-point victory.
I agree.
But the girls gave it their all. Both sides of it. There was no letdown, and you saw it in the celebration with Stanford. Right?
No, and I think that's the whole point, and that was why I didn't really go into the result. I was just talking about the overall competitiveness of that game, and I don't know if watchability is an actual word. Somebody just let me know, text me or whatever the case is. But yeah, full disclosure, with 5 minutes left in the Baylor Gonzaga game, I was like, man, And to me, there was nothing left, and you can tell that that game was a wrap, right? Whereas the Sunday game, the ladies, it was,
right down to the wire.
Boy, yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing, right to the wire. That's right.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing some of these players, in WNBA, because a lot of them have some talent, especially like you said, Aari McDonald.
Let's see more of it.
Yeah, exactly. They need to be on, up here in Canada. They were on TSN. We had Kia Nurse, we had Burness, we had, there was a specific show just for the women, and that's what we need to see more of. We need to see more of those games, because at the end of the day, they're exciting games. Say what you will, say whatever you want, write your stupid comments in the comments about women basketball and all this stuff, but it's competitive basketball, and I enjoyed watching the entire tournament. So, right, moving on to some.
I agree. And if you're criticizing it, please try to play ball with these ladies, okay?
Exactly.
And then come talk to me.
Exactly. Try and play some ball with them, and you probably would break an ankle or two, right? So moving on to some NBA talk. ESPN the other day. It's been a hot topic issue. The last thing, Kendrick Perkins, Stephen A. Smith, we're all kind of going in on it, right?
Here we go.
Right? But they released their top 25 under 25, right? It was kind of, I don't know, it's just, and full disclosure, before we get into it, it's based off of potential, because Kendrick Perkins went in, and one of the ESPN analysts who was one of the reasons for it to put the ballot out was Bobby Marks. And he said it's based on potential. Okay, so to give a little insight into the list, but I'm going to run down the list for you here, right? So this is their list based off of the average of the three ballots between the three guys, right? So between Bobby Marks, Kevin Pelton, and Mike Schmitz, right? So at number 1, we got Luka Doncic. Number 2, we got Zion Williamson. Number 3, we got LaMelo Ball. Number 4 is Donovan Mitchell. 5 is Jason Tatum. 6 is De'Aaron Fox. 7 is Ben Simmons. Devin Booker is number 8. Bam Adebayo is number 9. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is number 10. We got Brandon Ingram at 11, Jaylen Brown at 12, Jamal Murray at 13, MPJ Michael Porter Jr. at 14, Ja Morant at 15. We got Trae Young at 16, Mikal Bridges at 17, Domantas Sabonis at 18, Anthony Edwards at 19, DeAndre Ayton at 20, Tyrese Halliburton at 21, 22 is John Collins, 23 is Jarrett Allen, 24 is Lonzo Ball, and 25 is Colin Sexton. So I've listed the list. It's a long one. You guys are going to have to listen to it, right? If you want to know the entire list, you can't just pick the top 10. You got to listen to the entire list and listen to what we're going to have to say. But I'm going to start with the back of the list. Lonzo effing Ball is on the list of under 25. And there's a guy with the New York Knicks by the name of RJ Barrett, who's had an outstanding season this year. He's arguably the number 2 option on the New York Knicks. Lonzo Ball is the number 3 or 4 option on the New Orleans Pelicans, right?
Right.
RJ Barrett didn't even make this list. Yes, he was on the list of both Bobby Marks and Mike Schmitz, I believe, but they were late picks, so he didn't end up on the list, right, based off of the averages. But how the heck do you not have a guy like RJ Barrett on the list? If it's based off potential, RJ Barrett has some of the best potential, I think, of any of the young players in the NBA right now.
Okay. I mean, what was the reason it was? Because I didn't watch it, but first of all, congratulations, because you did surprise me. I was not thinking of that name. But it doesn't surprise me after you said it. I guess so. But was there a reason why he was not on the list?
No, they didn't.
We can argue why he should be, but why? I guess the argument is, why shouldn't he be on the list?
I don't know. I don't know. Like, to be honest with you, I don't know what the reasoning for it was, because at the end of the day, if you look at that bottom half of the list, maybe he's not a top 20 player in terms of under 25, But in terms of top 25, Lonzo Ball was at 24, right? I mean, at the end of the day, Lonzo Ball, I don't think he deserves to be on this list. There was trade talks for him.
No, it's not.
Right, exactly, right? So you could replace him with him. John Collins is having a great season. Jarrett Allen, great season. But, I mean, he's only kind of burst onto the scene the last year or so. RJ Barrett coming out of college had high praise coming out of college, right? He had his 1 year, and then he came into the NBA. And he had a decent year last year, 15 points per game. This year he's averaging 17 points, almost 18 points a game. And the New York Knicks are in the 8th seed, right? Like I said, he's arguably the second option on the New York Knicks behind Julius Randle right now. And I don't think it's just – I don't know. It's just weird to me how you don't have a guy like RJ Barrett on the list, but you have a guy like Lonzo Ball. And, name notoriety, I guess, goes with it because his brother's on the list as well. But I just don't see why Lonzo Ball needs to be on this list. Right? I mean –
Is DeAndre Ayton the number one option in Phoenix? I'm going somewhere with this.
No, he's like, to be honest with you, it's weird because you look at this list, there's 3 Phoenix Suns on this list. Devin Booker, Mccollum Bridges, and you have DeAndre Ayton, right? So there's 3 talented young guys.
Right.
But at the end of the day, Mccollum Bridges is probably the 4th option, 5th option on that team. 4th option, I would say. And DeAndre Ayton is probably the 3rd option on that team with Devin Booker being the number 1 option, Chris Paul being the facilitator as the number 2 option. But those guys can go hand in hand as the 1 and 2. But DeAndre Ayton, he has the potential to become arguably a top center in this league. He hasn't showed the potential. This year he's having a great season. But, he could be off the list, in my opinion. But you can't take him off the list due to the fact that – I don't think you can take him off the list due to the fact that he's having an outstanding season this year in terms of he's taken a step forward, right? So I think the potential's there for him to grow into one of the top centers in the NBA. So I don't see how you take him off the list. Mccollum Bridges at 17. I like Mccollum Bridges, but he's not – he's kind of burst onto the scene this year. Last year he had a good season coming off the bench. This year he stepped into that starting role more or less, and he's had a good season, right? He's had one of the best seasons of his career, obviously. It's a short career, but I don't know if 17 on the list is where he needs to be above a guy like Anthony Edwards or a Tyrese Halliburton, in my opinion. But, I mean, that's just me.
So here's the question. You have 2 draft picks. Your GM in the NBA, you have, so let's see, Lonzo Ball and RJ Barrett. Who are you drafting first?
RJ fucking Barrett in a heartbeat.
Because, right, what RJ Barrett was a first round pick, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, he was.
Out of, obviously, Duke, right?
Yes.
Okay. So that means that you knew what his potential was in college, and based on the scouting and based on where he was drafted, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Now, let's not make the argument on where Lonzo Ball was drafted because you've seen what Lonzo Ball is right now.
Yeah.
So this is where I agree with you to your point. And it's you can actually argue that maybe both of them shouldn't be in the top 25 if that's going to be your argument. If you're going to put Ball in the 24th spot and you're not going to put Barrett in the 25th, I'd rather have them both off the list.
Yeah,
because to me the path and again, RJ Barrett's season last year was average.
Yeah,
right.
He
struggled a little bit.
Yeah,
right?
He had ups and downs, but I mean, he was
right. I mean, but what has Lonzo Ball done that you say to yourself, "Oh my goodness gracious," right? Like when you look at this list, right? You can make an argument for every single player on this list. Maybe not Sabonis, right? And I'm a huge fan of Sabonis, but his game is a little bit different. That you say when you watch them, something jumps out, right? What jumps out of watching Lonzo Ball?
That's my thing, and that's why I'm saying, like, I mean, at the end of the day, like, he doesn't need to be on there. He's the 3rd option on the New Orleans Pelicans. They were talking about him possibly being traded from the New Orleans Pelicans to the New York Knicks. Right, so it's not like
nobody's saying they're going to trade RJ Barrett.
Exactly, and like RJ Barrett is a cornerstone piece maybe not a cornerstone piece, but he's a franchise
It's a
piece,
building block,
right? He's a building block for the New York Knicks. They've got Julius Randle. They've got they've got RJ Barrett. They've got Emmanuel Quickly, right? That's 3 positions where you've got really talented players to build your roster. And the New York Knicks haven't had that in a long time, right? And now you've got it with 2 players that are playing really good basketball. Lonzo Ball, he's had a tumultuous career since coming into the NBA, right? With the Lakers, started out with the Lakers, got moved from the Lakers to the New Orleans Pelicans for Anthony Davis, right? Now there's talk about him being traded to the New York Knicks. So I mean, to me, he shouldn't be on the list. I would be if I was doing this list, right? If I was doing this list, he'd be off my list. RJ Barrett would be number 25, 24. You could interchange him with Colin Sexton, in my opinion. I like Colin Sexton. I think he deserves to be on this list because I think he's going to be a bona fide superstar type player.
Can I just go to the top of the list for one second?
Yeah.
I don't disagree with Luka. I mean, I'm riding with Luka all the way. I'm cool with that. I may or may not have a problem with number 3.
Yeah.
Not because I don't think the kid's talented or his potential is outside of his injury, he was the rookie of the year was pretty much almost a wrap, right? Yeah. So obviously based on that, I just don't know if I think he might be a little bit too high.
Oh, I think he's way too high.
And the reason I say is because the season's not even done yet, right? Like I've seen what Luka's done. We've seen what Zion's done, and he's getting better. If Zion gets a jump shot, and he can hit his
going to be dominant
free throws. Yeah. By this time next year, we might be talking about Luka being number 2. I'm dead serious.
Agreed.
Right, and Ball, I think it's too high. We've seen what Donovan Mitchell can do, regardless of his limitations on defense or whatever the case is. And it's funny, this list, we're talking about this list a day after he dropped, what he dropped last night on your Phoenix Suns, 39 or something like that. In a
41.
Loss. But 40, I shortchanged him by, okay. Anyways, but we've seen what he can do. Tatum, I think he's too low. I don't know. Or you can leave him there. That's fine. I mean, I like Tatum. I might be a little bit biased there, but I just don't know if Ball should be number 3. As a matter of fact, I think that you need to switch 4 and 3.
Yeah.
And by the way, Simmons is way too high for me.
And that's what I was just going to say. At the end of the day, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Donovan Mitchell is 24 years old. So, I mean, if you're talking about 25 players under 25, there's still potential for Donovan Mitchell to grow into an elite player if he already hasn't done that. I mean, whatever Shaq wants to say aside, Donovan Mitchell is an elite player. He's an elite player. Yes, he's got his knock on the defensive side of the ball. But at the end of the day, you have Devin Booker as your number 8 ranked player right now, and he's 24 years old as well. But him and Donovan Mitchell have very similar stats this season, right? And Devin Booker's having better season in terms of defensive side of the ball, in terms of steals and stuff like that. He's learning from Chris Paul, and he's learning all that stuff from CP3 there, right? So he's having a better season this year. So I definitely think, Ben Simmons, arguably all-world defender. He's an all-NBA defensive player. He's going to make the all-NBA defensive team for the second year in a row. But he doesn't have a three-point shot. So how do you put somebody like I don't know how you value defense over offense so much that Ben Simmons and Devin Booker can't switch positions. Do you know what I mean? If you look at, and I'll go to their ballot specifically, right? So Bobby Marks had Ben Simmons as number 4 on the list. He had Devin Booker as 5, right? He had Devin Booker as 5. He had Spida as 6, and then he had LaMelo Ball as number 8. I like LaMelo Ball at 8. I think he is a top 10 potential player. He has the ability to become an amazing point guard.
That's reasonable.
Right? I would have him in the top 10 for sure. I'm not going to knock him out of the top 10. I don't think he deserves to be out of the top 10. He definitely deserves to be in the top 10 over them. I don't think Ben Simmons should be as high as he is. But at the end of the day, I guess it's all based off of averages. But it all depends on how you rank defense over offense. To me, Ben Simmons would be in the top 10. Yes, definitely would be. He's all-world defense, like I said. but I don't think he should be 7th. I think he should be maybe in the 9th, 10th range for me. That's where I would have him. I would agree with Mike Schmitz, who had him as 10th right now, right? But Mike Schmitz had Devin Booker as 9th, right? So that's why he's so low in terms of where he is, right? But Devin Booker has a knock defensively as well, like Donovan Mitchell, right? It's just weird.
Right. And you can argue that a lot of these guys have knocks defensively, right? But again, a lot of these guys are in their 2nd or 3rd year in the league.
Yeah.
And defense takes time to develop, and I completely understand that. But like to me, there's not enough of even in a small sample size. And again, I understand potential means you're foreseeing for somebody to be what they should be in the future, right? And I get it. Like LaMelo Ball in maybe 2 years might be a top 3 or 5 player.
Yeah.
But I don't know if, and again, I don't want to contradict myself because this is looking forward, but I think it's a little bit too early to put him in top 3. And again, even just foreshadowing, looking in the future, like if you're building your team, I'm starting with Luke, I'm starting with Zion, I'm going Donovan Mitchell, I'm going Jason Tatum. De'Aaron Fox doesn't get enough credit because he plays in bloody Sacramento.
Yeah.
Right? So, because if I can guarantee, if De'Aaron Fox played in Boston, he played in Chicago, and he played anywhere else other than Sacramento, De'Aaron Fox, there's no way that he would be number 6. He would probably be top 3, guaranteed. So De'Aaron Fox gets penalized for Sacramento. That's not his fault. But Bam Adebayo over Brandon Ingram, I'm not too sure if I agree with that, because Brandon Ingram plays in a team that is still being completed with regards to the Pelicans, whereas Bam has been, and again, not penalizing him, because Jimmy Butler and all them other guys in Miami, that's a pretty good team. So, you can sort of, give Bam a little bit of leeway in the sense of he's not the man, right? Yeah. But again, this is not my list. I'm just saying that I don't agree with it.
So, if you were doing this, who'd be your top 10?
My top 10?
Yeah, who did you have?
I would go Luka, Zion. Yeah, I would go Luka, Zion, Donovan Mitchell. How many is that? 3?
That's 3.
Right? De'Aaron Fox, Jason Tatum. Actually, sorry, 1 second. I'm just going to give you a 10, and then I'll switch it up. Yeah. Devin Booker. Okay. Brandon Ingram.
Mm-hmm.
Jamal Murray.
Yeah.
Ja Morant.
Yeah.
How many am I at? 8?
Yeah.
Right. Jaylen Brown. LaMelo Ball. That's 10. Yeah, that's 10. That would be my 10.
So my 10.
And just so I can correct myself before, I don't want you to text me later and cuss me out. I would actually move Devin Booker into the top 4.
Yeah. I'm not gonna think.
There's no doubt. I just reeled off a bunch of names, but Luka's my undisputed number 1, and then I would have everybody else, slotted accordingly. And Devin Booker would be 3 or 4, no doubt about it. He is way too low on this list. Way too low.
See, and I'm a Booker fan, obviously, as you could tell the 2 jerseys behind me, but I wouldn't have him in my top 5, right? I think he's a good player, but I wouldn't have him.
You wouldn't have Devin Booker in your top 5?
No, I wouldn't have him in my top 5 in terms of this list, in terms of potential, because there's a defensive side of the ball that he's still struggling at. He's also 24 years old, right? So, there's still potential there. I would have him probably as my 6th, or maybe I would have him in my top 5 as number 5, but I wouldn't have him in the 3 or 4 position like Bobby Marks had him. So my top 10 would be Luka Doncic, obviously, Zion Williamson. For number 3, I'm going to go Jason Tatum. For number 4, I'm going to go Donovan Mitchell. I'm keeping Donovan Mitchell where he is. De'Aaron Fox is going to go as my number 5. We're going to go Devin Booker as 6. That's who's my number 6 for me. We've got I'm going to put Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as my number 7. Right. Number 8 is going to be Ja Morant. Number 9, I'm going to go with Ben Simmons. And then number 10, I'm going to go with Brandon Ingram. Those are my top 10. Right then, that's my top.
Is it funny that none of us picked Trae Young?
Not really. I mean, he's still 22 years old, but I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, he's got the scoring ability. Like, I mean, there's no questioning that, but he doesn't play defense at all, right? I remember what I said before. NLD, no lick of defense, right? So he doesn't play that. So, right? He doesn't play the NLD, no lick of defense, right? So he's part of that crew with James Harden and stuff, right? So I wouldn't.
James Harden is the GOAT of NLD, man.
Exactly. James Harden, right? You got we could come up with, maybe we'll do that for one of our posts, right? The no lick of defense team, right? Starting five, right? There you go, right? We could a point guard, shooting guard already with Trae Young and James Harden, right? No lick of defense. So, but no, I like where he is, to be honest, on that list. 16th is a pretty good spot for him, in my opinion, for a 22-year-old guy who doesn't play defense. But I don't.
But again, the top three were pretty much the same, and Luka is the undisputed champ right now.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's obvious. And it's funny though, because there was a few individuals, and I know some of them personally. I'm not going to name names. Some of them may have been blocked, but anyways, that said that when Luka came out, that he was too slow for the NBA game. That he would never develop into this elite star. And I know for a fact it wasn't just people, casuals, and I hate that word. I shouldn't probably use it because it's whatever. But there were people that were saying that Luka was not going to be this guy that he's turned out to be, right? Because he's too slow for the NBA game. His footwork is not as crisp as everybody else's. And all of a sudden, Luka's on everybody's top 15, 20, whatever. Even if you do this list without the top 25, under 25, and you just ask people, where do you put Luka? He is, I guarantee you, in the top 10 minimum in everybody's list. So again, sometimes you have to see things how they work out, and this is why I'm a little bit hesitant about LaMelo Ball, because we haven't seen the complete package. Like, what we've seen is pretty good. There's no doubt about it. Again, may or may not be the rookie of the year still, even with the injury.
Yeah.
But, things happen, man, right? So I can see why people will get into fights with this list, though.
Yeah, I totally see why. But at the end of the day, I'm not. At the end of the day, the list isn't horrible. Like, it's not horrible. I was pissed off about the fact that RJ Barrett wasn't on the list and Lonzo Ball was on the list. There could have been a couple other changes, but if we're talking about potential, I agree with the list. The top 10 for me is okay in terms of what's in there. Could be changed around a little bit, in my opinion, but maybe we'll do our own top 25, 125, right? But we won't steal that from.
Yeah, we're better at that.
Right, exactly.
We'll do something better.
Right, exactly. Last topic before we end off this podcast here. Portland Trailblazers, right? They're 30-20 on the season, right? 30-20 on the season. I believe they are the 6th seed in the Western Conference right now. If the season were to end today, they would be taking on the Los Angeles Clippers. So are the Portland Trailblazers overrated or are they underrated? That's the question I have for you. Are they overrated or underrated?
I had to think about this, even though I sort of talked about this before, but we never expanded on it. I think they are exactly where they should be. Don't you think? Like, I think if the Trailblazers were a top 3 team, we would all say that they're overrated, right? And they're not a bottom 3 team, right? But I think that they are exactly where they should be, considering where they play. Now, in saying that, you have Dame, you have CJ McCollum, Nurkic when he's healthy can be a problem, right? They added our guy here, number 24, Norm Powell, right? Understand the grind, which was a phenomenal addition. I just don't know where to put Portland, because I think they're good enough with the talent, just from a talent standpoint, to get to a Western Conference final. At the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if they get bounced in the first round. Mm-hmm. I just don't know. Listen, Dame is the most, and maybe there's another topic for another day. Dame, I think, is the most clutch player in the NBA, or at least top 3 for sure, no doubt about it. Don't fight me on it, okay? But there's just something missing with that team, and I just can't put my finger on it. I don't think that makes it underrated. I don't think that makes them overrated. I think that's why they're a 6th seed, right? I think in a few years ago, maybe you could argue they were overrated because, again, that's what overrated teams do, right? They're seated high and then they get knocked out, right? Underrated teams get seated low and then they, go through 2 rounds, right? That's what makes you underrated because you didn't see it coming. I think that they're right where they should be. 6th, 5th, 4th. That's exactly where they should be. I just don't know what their ceiling is. I don't know if this is it for them, right? And then at a certain point, when do you say to Portland, okay, this group is not getting it done, right? Like, this is one of these questions that I just can't wrap my head around because I don't know what they can do. Like, they have 2 players that are complete bosses, and CJ and Dame, and Dame can go off at any time, 60 points whenever you want, or hit clutch shots, right? Shout out to the T-shirt there,
right? Dame time.
But I just don't know when it comes to the playoffs. It's, again, I use that whole analogy, like the Dutch soccer team. It's just the skills there, the talent's there. It's just that sometimes you just fall flat on their face. I don't know.
Yeah, I think they're kind of they're Jekyll and Hyde.
And I guess I didn't answer your question, by the way.
Right?
Yeah.
I think they're Jekyll and Hyde in a sense, right? They had to deal with, especially this season, right? They're 30-20. They've kind of overperformed what I thought they would happen after they lost TJ and Josef Nurkic, right? The fact that they're still in a playoff spot in the tough Western Conference at 30-20, and they're 10 games above 500, right? They're 6-10 in their last 10 games. But you've got
6-4, right?
Yeah, they're 6-4 in the last 10 games. They lost one game, but you've got 5 guys, I believe, now that you've added Norman Powell that are averaging double figures for them, right? Enes Kanter has been huge off the bench for them. Has been huge. A huge addition for them, right? He's averaging a double-double this season, shooting almost 60. He's shooting 60% from the field, right? So he's been a huge addition for them. But I think they're Jekyll and Hyde in terms of they're overrated and underrated at the same time, and that's what I wanted to say. Like they're underrated in the fact that analysts and other people don't give them enough credit, right? Because of past performances in playoffs and all this stuff. But Damian Lillard, like you said, is arguably one of the clutchest players in the NBA, right? And maybe we'll do that for our bracket that we want to do. The clutch players, you know what I mean? Right?
No spoilers.
No spoilers, but we'll save that. But he's arguably one of the clutchest players. CJ McCollum can shoot the ball, shoot the lights out, right? You added Norm Powell. He can shoot the lights out when he's playing well. Right, you've got Carmelo Anthony, Carmelo Anthony's past his prime. We obviously know that he's not the Carmelo Anthony for the New York Knicks, but he's a solid piece on that team. He's a solid veteran.
But he can still go get it.
Right, exactly. Absolutely. And we saw in the playoffs that he was able to put up points last year. And they've been good on the road and they've been good at home as well, right? Having identical 15-10 records at home and away, right? So I think they're underrated and overrated. I think they're overrated in the sense that when it comes to playoff time, it always comes down to the same thing. Damian Lillard plays well. CJ McCollum doesn't play well in the playoffs, right? And then it's like you're relying on Damian Lillard to do all the heavy lifting, and it just doesn't work out for them. So and that's why I think they're overrated and underrated at the same time. But I think they're more underrated in my opinion. I think a lot of people don't give them the credit that they deserve just because of past playoff performances and things that have happened to them, right? So I would have to go with that, but it's Dame time all the time when Dame Lillard's on the floor.
But again, they play in a tough Western Conference, right? And you always hate to have that argument. Well, if they played in the East, well, they don't, right? Geographically, doesn't make sense. They don't. But if they did, I mean, first of all, 30-20. That's nothing to shrug your shoulders at. That's a pretty decent record, man, right? But again, this is they play in the gauntlet that's the Western Conference, and going up against the Clippers, if the playoffs start today, which they don't, that's a tough matchup too, right? But it can go either way. Like, I can see Portland beating the Clippers in 7 games, but I can also see the Clippers beating Portland in 7 games, right? I mean, Kawhi and the other guy,
Pandemic
right?
P.
So, but again, but eventually this conversation is going to have to turn into, well, we know what you are, but what can you do in the playoffs? Because if you're going to get in, that's cute, right? But eventually you're going to have to do something with it, because getting to the third round is not going to be enough. They're going to have to get to a finals and at least prove that this overrated, underrated stuff it's a wrap.
I agree.
And again, I just don't know if they're missing their other piece. Every team in the NBA, for the most part, that has won championships outside of the Toronto Raptors has had, pretty much at least 2 or 3 studs that perform day in and day out, superstars, right? In the playoffs. You saw in Toronto here, he had Kawhi, we had Kawhi, but the supporting cast was so good that you didn't really need an elite player. So I think the Raptors were a bit of an outlier in that.
Yeah.
But Lakers stacked 2 of the top 5 best players in the world, right? Brooklyn, we're not even going to talk about it, right? Like you can make an argument, Philadelphia has 2 top 10 players in the league. Boston, who's underperformed by a country mile, Jaylen Brown, they have Jason Tatum, right? So you need to stack up your teams. And Portland has CJ and Dame. But I mean, and actually you made a very good point. Sometimes CJ just runs out of gas. Right?
Yeah.
Now, maybe this is the year because CJ has missed a lot of time, so he's been parked a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? So maybe his legs are a little bit fresher than they usually are.
Yeah.
Right. But they're going to need a little bit more from other pieces, and maybe adding Norm Powell is an underrated move because Norm Powell has been through shit in the Eastern Conference, and he has experience, and he has at times been relied on to do a lot of different things. So he can maybe bring a little bit of a different thing. But again, a healthy Lakers team, healthy Clippers team, I just don't know where you can get, how far Portland can get.
Yeah, and Norm Powell's got a title to his name, right, too? So he's got championship pedigree, even though, right? So you're adding championship pedigree to a team that really hasn't gotten to that step, right? Where they've supposed to get to that step, right? So I guess we'll see what happens when it comes to playoff time. But if you're watching this video, right, just look down below. There's a little subscribe button. Just click that subscribe button. Click the little bell notification so you get notified when we drop our right at the bottom. When we drop our drop our podcast, right? Yeah, you'll get notified. Right, we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter. You can follow us there. We're also on Apple Podcasts. We're on Spotify. We're on Amazon Music. Right, we're on Reddit, like I said last time. So we're everywhere and anywhere. So if you want to listen to this, you like our podcast, reach out to us. Let us know what you think of it.
Yep.
Right. So, and we'll be dropping some new features next week and some more posts on our Instagram and Twitter that'll get you guys involved a little bit more.
I thought we were going to say you're going to drop some bars. I'm like, whoa, what's going on here?
No, I don't think you want to hear me do that.
Actually, I might.
I'm no Mac Miller. That's for sure. I can tell you that.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Basketball Lab podcast. Thanks for joining us this week on the Basketball Lab podcast. Make sure to follow us on our social media. You could follow us on Instagram and Twitter at the B-Ball Lab. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Basketball Lab podcast, and you could also find us on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music.